Okay, so investigate. I wanted to investigate the relationship and want to do my research on the relationship between being abused or neglected in childhood with adult spirituality. And so basically, what I did was I did a big survey that had widely used abuse and neglect scale. Had 5 different types of abuse: sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, and emotional neglect. Had that, and then I had this other scale that measured different types of spirituality. I defined spirituality. I read a lot. I hadn't studied about spirituality at all. I wanted to study it, but I hadn't read about it. I'd read the Bible and stuff. But anyway, so what I found out when I started investigating spirituality from a social work perspective is that social work has sort of a history with, we come from a spiritual or religious base, but then they kind of kicked spirituality and religion out of social work because people were, like social workers were hitting people over the head with the Bible and saying, hey, if you just believe in Jesus, you'll get well. And so there was a little bit of, trying to evangelize to people as a way of getting people well. And social work didn't like that very much. Or sometimes religion can be really judgmental, and so we sort of got rid of spirituality and religion. And so when I was starting to investigate how I'm going to measure spirituality for my dissertation, I sort of came upon this idea of connectedness as a form of spirituality. Connectedness with a higher power, connectedness with other people, connectedness with humanity, and connectedness with something internal that feels like a spiritual part of the self. And so I had this scale. I actually made part of the scale, constructed part of the scale and tested it out. But anyway, so I investigated relationship. I did a bunch of surveys. We had about 250 surveys returned. And by answering the questions in the survey, and then by me sort of analyzing the data, I was able to sort of investigate the relationship between people who had been different types of abuse during childhood and what their spiritual, were they connected with God? Were they connected with others? Were they connected to a spiritual inner self? That kind of thing. So that's what I did. And and like I had found in clinical work, working with people one-on-one or in groups of with groups of people, my data suggested that people who had been abused in various ways um, had lower levels of connectedness with God, connectedness with other people, what I defined as spirituality. And what also I found when I analyzed the data some more is the more abuse you have, which is also what you find when you're working clinically, the more abuse that you have or the more maltreatment that you have, the more negative effect that it has. So that's what I did my dissertation on. The end. Now what?
So you're part of sort of a group of scholars that are social workers and work around spirituality and religion. So you go to conferences where this is the topic that's discussed. How do you feel religion plays a role in social work scholarship now from going to those conferences?
Yeah, there's this whole group of people that want to bring spirit. By the way, there's different groups of religious or spiritual social workers. People who want to blend the two of them. That many of us feel that there's a natural link between helping people and there's something spiritual or religious inside of them. And there is, if you guys study, I mean, if you look up liberation theology or the history of the African American church, you'll see that there's a big link between wanting to help people and formal religion. All formal religions have some, like you guys are reading in your book, studying, all formal religions have some form of helping people. But the problem that people had, like I said before, the problem that people had was that a lot of times people were taking that religion and putting it, what some of us felt was too strong, into social work, where as if I wasn't a Christian, if I was a client and I wasn't a Christian, somebody with Christian beliefs would try to put those beliefs on me instead of straight helping me in social work. And so, you know, you have lots of issues that we help people with, whether it's you know, divorce or you know, abortion or gay and lesbian issues or any number of things that sort of some religions have weighed in on really strongly. And so we have to be sort of careful. How do we best serve our clients and still maintain our sort of spiritual, and do we have to keep our spirituality and our religion sort of to ourselves and hide it so that we don't negatively affect? So there's big questions, but the groups that I've sort of been affiliated with, one of them is called the Society for Spirituality and Social Work. And so what that group is it's really a sort of a eclectic or varied group of people that have Native American spirituality, Buddhism, Hinduism, African American traditional Catholicism, Jewish, all kinds of spiritual backgrounds, and as a group they're sort of united, and other people who aren't part of that group, but as a group they're sort of united in trying to figure out how we can live our spirituality and help that become a force in our helping. You guys probably have read in your books that there's lots and lots of studies that say spirituality is important to most people. Religion is an important way that people get knowledge or answers to their most pressing questions. And so for a long time social work sort of ignored that and said, oh, we're more psychological. And so now there's a big movement to blend the two of them. And for me personally, what I think it's about is I have to maintain my own, try to maintain, continue to investigate my own spiritual beliefs. But I have to see if I can utilize some form of spirituality that isn't going to drive the client away, isn't going to make the client feel like I'm going to judge them negatively because they don't have the same spirituality as me. I also have to try to use a form of spirituality that is useful even when the client's spirituality is different than mine. So say, for example, if I'm working in hospice where you're working with somebody who's dying, what if I'm a Christian and they're a Jewish person or somebody with that whatever religion? How do I use my spirituality actively without, in some even small way, telling them? In other words, how do I use their spirituality to help them? How do I use spirituality in general, and how do I use their spirituality to help them in their... So I have to study their spirituality, various forms of spirituality, but I have to make sure that I don't start spouting out answers to their questions that have just a Christian base, or else my service to them is not going to be positive. So I guess the bottom line to your question is I have to use a form of spirituality that fits everybody, or at least fits the client that I'm in front of. And one of the challenges with that is, once you broaden your definition of spirituality out so much that it fits everybody, then it almost becomes like there's no definition. Oh wait, it's not about Jesus Christ, it's about... So you have to try to figure out how you're going to use your own spirituality and your own religion to help people without turning them off. It's a challenge. And I think my 2 cents for you guys is that if you want to maintain, if you feel like part of the core of who you are and part of the core of why you're helping has to do with your spirituality and your religion, then it's going to take a little work for you to try to figure out how to blend all that in with all of what social work is, and then make it. But if you can figure out the areas that you can blend it in, then you're going to become a much more powerful force in people's lives, because you're using those natural things that are answers for you and combining the answers that are natural for social work and finding out what the common ground is. And traditionally, one of the answers in social work has been, oh, put your religion aside, and in so doing, we're telling the client, in essence, put your religion aside And so if that's where they get their answers from, that's not very good. That's not very good advice. So.
Your concept of connectedness,
Uh-huh.
is that something that helps you do that, or do you think that's a helpful way to blend those things? Is seeing
Right.
spirituality as how we're connected to various aspects of our life and with our clients as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but for me, that's what I was trying to do. Is in this research, I was trying to give a spirituality a survey that asked them about their spirituality. And what I realized is many people's spirituality is varied. And so if I ask them about one kind of spirituality, like say for example, uh, how much do you rely on Jesus Christ, or your belief in Jesus Christ as the answer to your question, or as the answer to your problems, there could be some people, and are some people in whatever group you ask that question to, who have a strong spirituality and a strong belief system, but that don't specifically believe in Jesus Christ. And so when that person answered that question, they would appear to be unspiritual in that way, and that's sort of not what I wanted to have happen. I don't see people as unspiritual if they don't believe exactly what I believe. So when I was studying, I found out that in the literature that there was this repeated pattern over and over and over about connectedness being this thing that people talked about, that were present for people that were spiritual, or characteristic of spirituality. Like when I think about like the relationship between a mother and a kid, when I see that in action, I think of that as very spiritual, maybe one of the highest forms of spirituality, right? Purity and all that stuff. And you see that connection, I'm like, wow, that is profound. So I called that some form of spirituality, or connectedness between a husband and wife, or connectedness between me and some other population that needs help, or connectedness between me and a higher power, however I define that. So connectedness was this theme that ran over and over and over. And so what I did was I attempted to find ways to measure those different kinds of connectedness. I don't know if this might be a little bit off task, but the one thing that the one way that I really wanted to measure spirituality, that I believe is spiritual, but I just had to finish my dissertation because I'd been in my PhD program for 6 years and I was broke and whatever. So I didn't do it. But one thing that echoed over and over for some people is connectedness between themselves and in the environment. Some people's spirituality is all about being with nature, and they feel that's whatever we might call a sense of peace, wholeness, connectedness with the larger sort of elements of the universe, or God himself or itself. But so I really wanted to go and get a scale that measured that, and I started to do that. And then my dissertation chair said, "Hey, man, come on, you need to get this thing done." So I said, "All right," and I just measured connectedness with the higher power. By the way, another element, I used the term higher power instead of God. The actual scale that I used originally said God, but the problem with that I found out through reading is some people call it God, some people call it Allah, some people might say that there is a higher power with a mind that's some type of being, but they're not going to call it God. And so if you ask somebody about their relationship with God, if they don't call it God, then they're going to say, "No, I don't." When really they do, it's just what you call it. So anyway, higher power, connectedness with self, connectedness with others in our immediate environment, like our friends or our family, and then connectedness with humanity. And so the other, I don't know if you want to know this, but one of the other studies I did was I did a study on the connectedness between, being social work, connectedness between spirituality and social advocacy, social justice advocacy. Like, do people confront injustice? Do people confront when somebody makes a racial joke or a joke about gay and lesbian? Do people organize and take action? Do they take action individually? And is that related to their sense of spirituality? Because my theory was that some form of spirituality is going to be connected to whether or not somebody jumps in and fights for what they think is right. And so I did that study as well and found out that there was, at least for the population that I surveyed, there was a relationship.
Cool.
Thank you. What else? Oh, I'm not supposed to ask you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Anything
it.
else?
That's
Anything, I mean, I think that's really a nice overview. Is there anything else you would want them to know with the limited information you know that they're getting from the introductory?
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say, I would just say if you have any kind of spirituality as a base, one of the things that you'll hear in social work, I think a lot of times, is that we're a pretty liberal profession. And sometimes that liberalness suggests that we should throw out religion or be wary or see religion as bad or something like that. And I would just want to tell you that there's lots of social workers who are religious, or very spiritual, and they're figuring out ways to say, hey, we're social workers, and this is what our strength is, and this is what our client's strength is, and so we're going to use it. So in your books, you might see like some apparent, like there's a split, and to some degree that's true, but I would say figure out your own way to mesh the two of them so that you can use the best of you and the best of your clients in helping your clients. That's my sermon for the day.
Thank you,
Dr.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
So hopefully